Looks like I was on mute. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone. Hope you and your family are doing well. I wanted to start off with a question and an icebreaker. The topic for today is prophetic parenting. Go ahead and write on the chat what is one parenting technique that you wish more people would implement or follow. I'll be silent for the next 30 seconds to a minute. But what is one parenting technique that you feel parents should follow and implement in their own lives? All right. One sister mentioned patience. I know I need more of it. Another person mentioned being a good role model. It's extremely important. Right. In that famous dua where we ask our children, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ, to become the coolness of our eyes. We often forget the last part, وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا, to become a good role model. So I'm glad Brother Imran mentioned that. You know, when parents come up to myself and ask, how can I get my kids to listen? There's a hadith where you're supposed to obey your parents. That's one of the major sins, to disobey your parents. But then when I ask these parents themselves, do you model that behavior? How do you treat your own parents? Because it is possible for us to be respectful and to obey our parents even after they pass away. Right? But if you're a person who never spends time with their parents, who doesn't spend quality time with their parents, but you expect your kids to be obedient to you, that's not good modeling. So that's an extremely beneficial comment. Thank you for writing that, Imran. Anyone else? Okay, Brother Ahmad mentions not slipping and not doing what you ask kids. Yes, so not right. Same thing with modeling. Not doing what you ask your kids to do. So if you ask your kids to read Quran, but they never see you reading Quran, right? That's not good parenting. Very nice. I'm going to share my PowerPoint for today. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. When Allah speaks about blessing people with children in the Quran, He uses this verb, wahab. Wahab, to me, it means to gift. Notice Allah did not use the word atina, right, to give. Rabbana atina fid dunya, but specifically in many times in the Quran, He uses the verb to gift. وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ يَحْيَى ووهبنا لداود لسليمان الحمد لله الذي وهب لي على الكبر إسماعيل وإسحاق. Allah uses the word gift. Wallahi, it is a gift. Those of you who have friends who don't have any kids and they are desperate for children, they would die to have kids, right? They're so desperate, but for whatever reason, Allah knows best, they have not been granted children. They truly know that children are a gift, and they are a gift in many ways. Our kids are a gift in many ways, and I'm sure you guys can elaborate on that. But one of the greatest ways our children are a gift for us is that one of the three things that will continue after we die, waladun salihun yad'u lah, a pious child that will continue to make dua for you, and you are continuing to rack up the points, rack up the reward while you are 6 feet below. That is one of the greatest gifts, right? That's an extremely amazing gift. The mark that we leave on our children, it is different than the mark that we leave on our friends. Yes, we can leave a strong impact on our co-workers, on our colleagues, on our friends. It is possible to leave a strong impact, but it is, it is even more, we have a higher potential of leaving a stronger impact on our kids, because their du'as, their prayers can propel us to an even higher state in Jannah. Their du'as can propel us to a higher level of in paradise. So children are a gift. My question is, are we taking advantage of this gift, or are we neglecting this gift? Are we taking advantage of this gift, or are we neglecting this gift? Before COVID, I was able to visit the inmates for Jum'ah once a month. But now, post-COVID, the only thing I'm able to do is visit them once a month, but I don't have Jum'ah services. I just meet them through a glass door and we speak like that, right? Via, they don't have a phone. There's a mic system under the window. Alhamdulillah, at least we're able to do that. And the reasons why people go to jail vary, right? Drugs, murder, robbery, sexual assault, physical assault. When I'm speaking with the inmates one-to-one, I notice they're a little bit more open than when I used to speak with them after Jum'ah. So that's one benefit I've noticed of doing these one-on-one sessions. And then when I listen to how they describe their childhood, the vast majority of inmates that I spoke with did not have a fatherly figure in their life. They did not have a strong relationship with their parents or with the adults in the community. So we see that many parents have neglected this gift of children, and it affects their children and it affects their children's children, right? The dua that we make, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا, but not just our kids, وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا, our entire lineage. This is a powerful dua that we need to be making. Make our lineage the coolness of our eyes, not just our kids. Right, so that shows right there that many of us right here in Waukegan, right here in Lake County, we're not taking advantage of this gift. Some of our kids do dangerous things online, such as being vulnerable with strangers and sharing personal information online. Why in the world would our kids do this? Why would they do this? Right, there's a film that I saw a few months ago called Searching, and this person, he's trying to find out where his daughter is, but first he has to find out who she is as a person. Right? Our daughters, our children do really strange stuff. We don't even know who they are online. Why? Because we have neglected this gift. According to the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard University, one characteristic of resilient children online is that they have a strong relationship with the important adults in their family and in the community. Those of us who take advantage of this gift, they are less likely to become extremely fragile online. If we take advantage of this gift, inshallah, our children will be resilient online. According to the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, and there's several other research out there, that one of the primary factors for low marital satisfaction is lack of parental involvement in children's lives. And unfortunately, this has caused a disturbing trend, even amongst couples who are not divorced. Not only is this one of the primary reasons for divorce, but this has caused a disturbing trend. And what is this trend? I spoke about this a few khutbahs ago, and I'll mention it again because it's so important, and that is peer orientation. peer orientation. Gordon Newfield, who is a clinical psychologist with children, he defined it as when peers matter more than parents. When peers matter more than parents. This is when children look to their peers for advice instead of their parents. When children look to their peers for what their values should be, for what their identity should be, for what their code of behavior should be. And as we know, a child's brain is different than an adult brain, and their brain cannot handle the competition, so they choose the peers instead of the parents. And when they do that, when they choose their peers for important decisions, then this interferes with the fitrah. This interferes with the healthy and natural development, the fitrah. Peer orientation, unfortunately, is starting to become normal. But just because something is normal doesn't mean that it is natural. Just because something is normal doesn't mean that it is natural. Absolutely not. What is the natural way? Allah says in Surah Al-Rum, ayah number 30, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. Adhere to the fitrah. Adhere to the natural disposition that Allah has instilled in all people. Just because it is becoming normal that our kids are starting to lean more on their peers, it does not mean that this is what is natural, right? I want to mention at the outset that having pious and righteous friends is not the problem. This is actually good for our kids. The problem is not peer attachment, right? Rasulullah said, وَالْجَلِيسُ الصَّالِحُ خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْوَحْدَةِ. Having pious, righteous friends is much better for our kids than being alone. That is not the problem. What is the problem then? The problem is when peer attachment is competing with the primary attachment. And when that happens, the child's brain is unable to handle the competition. So today, inshallah, I'd like to discuss why parents need to matter more than their child's peers, because this is more in line with the natural disposition that Allah has designed. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, every single one of you is a leader. Every single one of you is a shepherd, and you are responsible for your flock. Usually we just read this part of the hadith and we neglect the remaining portion of the hadith. But let me share with you the rest of this hadith. He also said, the leader of a people is a shepherd, and he is responsible for his subjects. Then he said, a man is the shepherd of his family, and he is responsible for them. And then he said, a woman is the shepherd of her husband's home and his children, and she is responsible for them. And then he said, the servant of a man is a shepherd and he is a guardian of the property of his master, and he is responsible for it. And then he said, no doubt every single one of you is a leader, is a shepherd, and you are all responsible for your flock. All of us have this responsibility. It's easy for us to think that we will send our kids off to school and inshallah the teachers, they will take care of everything. That is all that is needed. And I, as a parent, I can take a passive role. But unfortunately, there is a wealth of evidence that indicates that many problems occur when children lack parental involvement. A lot of evidence indicates that there's a significant a problem that occur when children lack your involvement. It is far, far better for parents to take an active role, because schools can only do so much. The daycare can only do so much. You are responsible. You, the parent, are the ra'i. So we need to act like the ra'i. We cannot delegate this responsibility of being a parent to someone else. Yes, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he delegated certain responsibilities, such as giving the adhan. He delegated this responsibility. He delegated teaching new Muslims how to read the Quran. He delegated leading certain military expeditions. He delegated distributing the wealth to the poor and needy. He delegated some of the general household needs to Anas ibn Malik. But did he delegate the task of being a husband? Did he delegate the task of being a grandfather? There were certain things that only he could do, and he never delegated those things. Likewise, my respected brothers and sisters, if you have this responsibility of being a parent, you have to play this role of being a shepherd. What happens if you don't? What happens when you don't take on this responsibility of being a shepherd? You will lose your kids to their peers. You will lose your kids to their peers. Your kids will begin to orbit around their friends. Your kids will begin to follow their lead instead of your lead, right? In important matters. And you will lose your influence, right? They will imitate their language, they will internalize their values, and they won't internalize your values. There's a strong correlation, right? Some of us just care about academics. There's a strong correlation between parental involvement and overall academic achievement. But many parents ask, aren't we not supposed to be the helicopter parent? Aren't we supposed to let go? Yes, we are supposed to let go, but only when our job is done. When we weaken the natural fitrah, when we weaken the fitrah at an early age, then peer orientation undermines healthy development. When we weaken the natural lines of attachment and responsibility, peer orientation will undermine healthy development. As Dr. Newfield mentions, children may know what they want, but it is dangerous to assume to know what they need. They may want to prefer contact with friends rather than being close with family, but a peer-oriented child does not necessarily know what is best. Therefore, if your parenting technique is 100% based upon your child's preferences, then you will be retired as a parent long before the job is done. And more bad news, there is a lot of social forces that are driving peer orientation in America. There's a lot of cultural forces, a lot of economic forces that are driving peer orientation. So the culture that we're living in is not necessarily helping our kids live according to their fitrah, right? That culture is not necessarily helping. I was I used to teach at kindercare, um, and there was a 5-year-old girl who was putting on we were going outside to go on the slip and slide and there was a 5-year-old girl who had her swimsuit on, but she also had the towel over her swimsuit. So the teacher assistant said, come on, Leslie, let's go. We have to go on the slip and slide. Everyone's waiting for you. She said, no, I can't. I'm naked. She put her towel over her swimsuit. The TA went up to her and she said, she saw that she was wearing the tank top, all right, and that swimsuit. And then she said, silly Leslie, you're wearing everything that you need to. Get out, go out to go outside and go on the slip and slide, right? But the 5-year-old Leslie knew that it's not appropriate to wear this in public, right? So there's what I'm trying to say is the American culture is not helping raise our kids according to the fitrah. But alhamdulillah, there's a lot that we can do so that we are not prematurely replaced. What is the solution? Well, let's turn to the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the reasons why he had such great influence with kids was because he had a rock solid relationship with them. Relationship is the problem, what's going through, right? That is the heart of parenting difficulties. That is the challenge, but that is also the solution if we focus on relationships. Adults who focus and who ground their parenting in a solid relationship with their kids, they don't necessarily need to read these parenting books on what to do, A, B, C, D. It will come naturally from the fitrah, because this is what Rasulullah ﷺ did. He had a rock solid relationship with children. So if we follow his sunnah, and we also have a natural, if we also have a solid relationship with our children, if we know how to be with our children and who to be for them, then it will become natural from our own experience on what to do. Because at the end of the day, parenthood is a relationship. Parenthood is a relationship, not necessarily a skill. So it will become natural from our own experience and what to do only if our relationship has been restored, only if we have a rock solid relationship. Some people think the power to parent comes from the fact that they have the wisdom to parent, but that's not true. Some people think the power to parent comes from the fact that they have the knowledge to parent, or they have the responsibility to parent, right? That I am the parent, you listen to me. I have the responsibility, you should listen to me. I have the physical strength, I have the emotional strength. They think that's where the power to parent comes from. Or I have the wisdom to parent, I have the knowledge to parent, but that's not where the power to parent comes from. Does your child want to be attached to you? Does your child want to belong to you? That is where the power to parent comes from. Right? Attachment. How can I get attached to my kids? And this is where we left off in the khutbah. This is where I want to continue. For us to have a rock solid relationship, we need to understand how attachment works. In physics, attachment is important. In astronomy, attachment is important. In chemistry, attachment is important. Well, attachment is also important in parenting as well. As I mentioned earlier, as long as we are attached with our kids, we can simply follow our instinct automatically and act on what is best for our kids. If our attachments are out of order, then our instincts will also be out of order. If we go on vacation and we are led by a tour guide who's been there and done that, and they know the place inside and out, then we will be comfortable with this tour guide. We will be comfortable. We will proceed with confidence. A parent is by far a child's best compass point. What is one of the greatest fears of a child? One of the greatest fears of a child is getting lost. To them, being lost means that they lose contact with their compass point. Some children, they use each other as a compass point. This is like the blind who are leading the blind. It's like a school of fish revolving around each other, but they feel as if everything is fine. According to an international authority on child development, there are 6 ways of attachment. Number 1, senses. The child needs to sense the person he or she is attached to through touch, through sight. We all know babies who are hugged, we all know babies who are cuddled, they fare far better emotionally than babies who are not cuddled. We all, alhamdulillah, I hope we all have cuddled our kids. We all have kissed our kids when they were babies. But a lot of us, I notice when they become teenagers, when they become adults, we don't hug them anymore. We don't kiss them anymore. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's mentioned in Tirmidhi, وَكَانَتْ إِذَا دَخَلَتْ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ صلى الله عليه وسلم قَامَ إِلَيْهَا فَقَبَّلَهَا. Whenever Fatima, his daughter, radiallahu anha, would enter, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would stand up and kiss her on the forehead. Right? And whenever she would enter, she would kiss him. Right? So number 1 is senses. That's one way how we can get attached to our kids even when they get older. Continue hugging them and continue kissing them. Number 2, he said sameness. Children want to be like those who they feel closest to. In the 90s, there was a phrase, I want to be like Mike. Like children want to imitate those who they feel closest to through imitation, through language. And he mentions that since the Second World War, the vocabulary of the average child diminished significantly. Why? It was because who the children were attached to. They were attached to their peers. Who were they talking to? Who were the children talking to? To their peers, to each other. And how many words did they need to communicate with each other? Apparently, not very many. So number 2 is sameness. Children want to be like those who they feel closest to. Number 3 is loyalty and a sense of belonging. Does your child have a strong sense of being accepted as a family unit? Do you accept them as who they are? Do you accept their interests? Do you accept their strengths? This is one of the greatest things of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would recognize people's strengths. Let's do a short exercise. I'm going to mention a hadith. You fill in the blank. Okay? So Rasulullah sallallahu he said, the most merciful of my ummah towards my ummah is, once again, I want you to fill in the blank. The most merciful of my ummah towards my ummah is Arhamu ummati bi ummati. You hear this in every khutbah. I know you know this. Arhamu ummati bi ummati. The most merciful of my ummah towards my ummah, yes, is Abu Bakr. And then he mentioned the one who adheres most sternly to the religion is وَأَشَدُّهُمْ فِي أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. Yes, you are correct, Umar. And then he mentioned the most sincere of them in shyness and in modesty is, you are correct, Uthman. And the best judge is, you are correct, Ali. The best in reciting the book of Allah is, Ubay ibn Ka'b. Ubay ibn Ka'b. The most knowledgeable of what is halal and what is haram is Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And the most knowledgeable of the rules of inheritance is Zayd bin Thabit. What I'm trying to say is, Rasulullah, he recognized people's strengths. Even though Abu Bakr and Umar were the most close to him, he made Khalid bin Walid the military commander. Right? He didn't make Khalid the Imam or the teacher of a madrasa. Right? He recognized people's strengths. This is something we need to do as well. Maybe one child is destined to become a great doctor, right? But perhaps not all of our children are destined to become doctors. That's why we should we should try to be a gardener instead of a carpenter. A carpenter carves wood into the shape that they want, whereas a gardener helps things to grow on their own by cultivating a fertile landscape, right? So we don't have to sculpt our child into something that we want specific, right? Whereas the gardener approach would be to sprinkle a variety of opportunities around the home and see which one sparks your child's interest. So that is belonging. The fourth one is significance. The fourth way to attach to our kids is to seek significance. Does your child, excuse me, do they feel that we matter to you? Right? Did you ever say those two words to your child? You matter. You matter. So the need for the child to feel special, to feel significant. And our books of hadith are filled They are filled with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, making the companions feel special. They're filled with genuine compliments from the Prophet sallallahu in regards to his companions, in regards to his wives, and they felt as if they belonged. So we need to continue this as well. Significance, right? And the fifth way of how I can attach to my kids is through feeling. Do our kids give us their heart? Because when our kids say, I love you, you know that they are telling the truth. They mean it, because emotional intimacy is much less common amongst peer-oriented kids than in parent-oriented kids. And if you're someone whose kids never said I love you, nor neither have you said I love you to your kids, then you should initiate it, because you are the shepherd at the end of the day. So some parents have told me that they think it's a little awkward to initiate it, so they write it on an Eid card or on their birthday card. They'll mention I love you, and then once they write it, it makes it easier to say it. But make sure that you do say this. You let them know that I love you. Why? Because this leads me to the last way of how we could attach to our kids, and that is being known. Right. This is why I mentioned that film earlier, Searching. Some parents, they think they know their kids, but based upon what their kids do online, they do not have a deep sense of who their child is. There are other parents that love their children, but they don't know their child. And equally worse is when the kids don't know that their parents love them, even though they do love them, but the parents, the kids don't know that. That is a very traumatic for the kids and for the parents. Many parents, almost all parents, have sincere intentions for their kids. They want what's best for their kids. They want a better life for their kids than they had. They love their child, but Dr. Gordon Newfield writes, children do not experience our intentions, no matter how heartfelt they are. They experience what we manifest in tone and in behavior. A friend of mine who is also an Imam, he mentioned at the Imam's conference that I was at last week that when parents come to him to talk to their kids, the first question he asked the kids is, do your parents love you? Do your parents love you? And he knows the parents. The Imam knows the parents. He knows that the parents love the kids. But just out of curiosity, he asked the kids, do your parents love you? And he says a lot of times, unfortunately, the kids say, I don't know. I don't know if my parents love me. So that is pretty scary. So inshallah, if you know these 6 ways of attaching to your kids, then inshallah you'll have that rock solid relationship with your kids. And once you have that rock solid relationship with your kids, you don't necessarily need a manual of what to do as a parent. Rather, it will come from your fitrah. It will come naturally. So in conclusion, we went over peer orientation. This is when peers matter more than parents. We went over how the problem is not peer attachment. Right? It's good for our kids to have friends. They need friends. Right? When they'll learn many important skills just by having friends, such as conflict resolution, amongst others. So the problem is not being attached to their friend. The problem when it competes with the primary attachment, which is you. Rasulullah said, each of you is a shepherd. There are certain things we can delegate, but do not delegate this responsibility. Otherwise, you will lose your kids to their peers. Rasulullah was attached with his family members right? He had a rock solid relationship with his kids and with his grandkids. As long as we are attached to our kids, we can afford to simply follow our instinct automatically. And then we went over the 6 ways of attachment. All right. It was very nice to see you all. It looks like there is one question. What is example of primary attachment? So primary attachment, according to Newfield, he mentions this is when the kids come to you in regards to the important questions that they have, in regards to their values, in regards to what their values should be, in regards to um, any crucial topics that are going on in their lives. They come to you instead of going to their friends. That would be one example of primary attachment. So, for example, if the child is going to, he's no longer a child, it's an adult. Your child has become an adult, and they want to get married, and they're seeing someone, but they think that their friend would rather give better advice than the parent, so they go to their friends instead of their parent, right? So that would not be an example of primary attachment. But if they come to you in regards to where they should study, in regards to who they should marry, in regards to where they should move, right? That would be examples of primary attachment. All right. Any other questions? It's very nice to see you all. Next week, inshallah, we'll have a discussion on masjid elections, the amana of voting. So that will be most likely at this same time, 7 to 7:45 p.m. That should be an interesting topic. It'll be next week or the week after. I'll have to confirm in a few days. You guys take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.